right, we got a few people dialed in. We got 8:05, so we'll go ahead and kick off, get started. I think we'll get a few more join in based on the number of positive RSVPs and kind of emails I've had indicating that some individuals might be joining late. Everybody's got a lot going on. So appreciate those that are on already. While we get started, go over the normal disclaimers at the beginning. While this is, IDP sponsored IDP resource, this is not for the benefit of IDP. It's not about recruiting or business development. As we state often, and you guys have all heard the narrative, we're trying to continue to establish a network of veterans, helping veterans, individuals that are at the far left of the process, either considering or starting the retirement or transition process, individuals that are right in the middle of it, and individuals that are kind of at the far right of it and have been through it, and sharing experiences. So while we hope that, there is an opportunity in some way to eventually work with or collaborate with all of you and serve some benefit, again, the disclaimer is, this is not for business development or recruiting. It's just a place to share information and connect. With that, always mention that the call is recorded. If you look in the lobby, you'll see Read AI on there. So we are recording these, and as you know, we're not only recording them, we're now putting them on our YouTube channel. So this will be public information. So just keep that in mind as we work through the conversations. Don't say anything that you wouldn't want anybody else to hear, right? With that, and if you have any issues, let us know offline, and we can work through that. But just, get it out there up front. We are recording, and these will be publicized and posted on the YouTube channel. And then the last thing, these are shared experiences. We're not professionals. But today we're going to talk about insurance. Last time we talked about VA claims, but in no way, shape, or form do we claim to be professionals. So at the end of the day, we encourage you to exercise your own judgment, exercise your own due diligence, and research the information and the guidance that you're given here. Again, this is a network of veterans helping veterans, sharing their own experiences, sharing their personal stories. But in some cases, it is important to go out and seek the advice of an expert and kind of sanity check what you might hear on this call. Drew, anything else you want to add to the disclaimer? Anything else I might have missed?
No, sounds good on the disclaimer.
Like I said, today is it's March. It's the March session. As we came out of calendar year 24, we started to put some structure. We had a schedule. So January was kind of the kickoff, laid out the schedule. Last month, we focused on the VA claim process. So this month, we're really supposed to focus in on insurances and kind of that whole process. We in the previous sessions, we've kind of touched on insurance just based on the questions that people have asked. We talked a little bit about, VA health versus TRICARE. We didn't really dive too far into life insurance and other insurances that you might have to consider, like homeowners insurance. If you've lived on base a lot, you may have not dealt with or had to research some of those things. Dental insurance. Sometimes throughout our careers, spending 20 years in the Marine Corps, you take for granted some of the things that are kind of spoon-fed to you, that are handed to you. And then all of a sudden you got to go out, research dental policies, research homeowners insurance, life insurance, and consider SBP, things like that. So we're going to dive into that a little bit tonight. As usual, we'd like it to be as much of a discussion as possible. We want to answer your specific questions. So for those of you that are in the transition pipeline or approaching that, we want to open it up for questions. So we'll probably kick off just some general scenarios and some experience sharing, but then get into the question and answer. But before we get into the subject of the evening, we got the disclaimer out of the way. Just want to share some updates on the program itself. For those of you that have been on, we're always continuing to improve the program. We're always trying to enhance it a little bit. So I already talked about the YouTube channel, posting the videos. We've made some progress since last month. We got, the 2 from this year up, and we've also gone back and got a few from last year up. And then one of the things that people talked about is in between, we do these calls once a month, but in between, how do we keep this network active? How do we communicate and follow up? Hey, I know that, on the last call, Paul Landers gave a lot of great advice on working in the local government. I want to reach out to him. How do I do that? So what we've done since the last call, I'm going to kick it over to Drew, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about what we've done since the last call to enhance our communication throughout the network. So Drew, over to you.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone who was on the call last month, because I feel like we made some good progress on seeing what people were looking for. And we kicked off a Discord server. So all that content is now going to be available out there. So anybody that wants it, just shoot me a message. You can drop it in the chat, or if you have my contact info, shoot me an email that you want to use. I'll get you an invite dropped over there. We've got everything from community to education, benefits discussions. There's just recaps for the monthly calls and networking employment stuff. So we're going to try to make all the resources available out there. Going to keep the conversation going. So if you have questions for people, like you saw somebody in the call, Taiwan, hey, I've got this thing down in Albany. Could you help me out with it? Or, hey, Brandon, I saw that sweet hat on the beach. Can you tell me where you got that? Just whatever. We want to make this a much more accessible and involved community instead of just having to creep on each other on LinkedIn. So that's open and available to you. Go ahead and just get in touch with me. I'll send out the link, the invite. It's closed community right now, but we want to open it up to everybody that's in here and get you the resources as best we can. And it's open for you guys too. Like, we are not the arbiters of all the information. So if you've got good stuff, put it in there. We'll keep an eye on it and keep improving as we go. So thank you guys all for your suggestions and contributions so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Anybody else?
For the record, Drew, that was soccer practice, and the hat was Amazon, $24.99.
Ooh, beautiful. I'm on it.
You should have seen the picture of Brandon that I saw today driving a freaking tractor on the road out there in his new farm life. So what hat were you wearing in that picture, Brandon?
I think that was a Toyota Tundra hat,
All right.
or one with a dog on it. I don't remember. It's one of my yard hats, man.
Yeah, it looked good though. It looked good. All right, cool. Thanks, Drew. Appreciate the update. So yeah, we're now continuing, like we said, to improve the communication amongst the group. We've got more platforms open. If you miss a call or you want to bring somebody in and tell them, hey, before you jump on your first call, you want to get a feel for what the environment's like, go ahead and watch some of the previous episodes on the YouTube channel. You can get to the YouTube channel through the website. So we've got the website up, information out there. We've got the YouTube channel with previous episodes or previous sessions, and now we've got the Discord server. So, in between calls, we can connect with each other and ask questions and make this beneficial for those that are going through the process. So, again, thanks, Drew and Abby, for all the work that you guys have done to kind of mature the whole program and bring us up and increase our connectivity. So like I said, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about insurance and then open it up to questions and open dialogue, anything that you guys might have. So as far as insurances go, we all have a different experience, a different perspective. You'll hear a lot of scuttlebutt. People will, as you're getting advice, as you're going through the process, some people are going to advise you on different things, right? So what we're going to share is our different experiences of things that we've dealt with, and then like general information. But again, like I said at the beginning of the disclaimer, do your own research, find out as much as you can. And then, we all have individual circumstances. So we might all have individual, choices that we make at the end of the day. But the one thing that is a fact, right? We have been on active duty for a long time. We've been the beneficiary of military treatment facilities. We've been the beneficiaries of base housing. We've been the beneficiary of dental, whether you want to call it great dental or not, that's depending on your individual experiences. But at least they schedule your appointments and they tell you when to go, right? You get out here and you're like, oh, wait, what? I got to go. You're doing all these things yourself, right? And then if you've lived in base housing, you've gotten comfortable. I say all the time now, we lived in base housing a lot throughout my 20 years, and now we own this house in Cleveland. And sometimes I'm like, man, I just want to call housing maintenance, tell them to change the light bulb. I don't want to do a lot of this stuff myself, but and then owning a home and insuring it. So all these things can be a little bit overwhelming as you're getting ready to transition and take on some responsibilities that you might not have had to deal with throughout your career. And where you're at in your career kind of impacts how you might make some of those decisions or how you might feel about some of that. So a lot of us are at the end of the spectrum where we're looking at 20 years, we're looking at retirement, right? We've got a couple individuals on the call that didn't do as much time and got out. So we're gonna share experiences from different ends of the spectrum and talk a little bit about that in those individual experiences. So first, I think we're gonna go to Abigail. Abigail is gonna talk a little bit about I think health insurance, right, Abigail?
Oh yeah.
The VA health specifically, right?
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
So I haven't had I don't have health insurance. My main go-to is the VA. So mostly what I know is 100% disabled, PT. The VA, you can use like, so when I've spoken to them, they say like, you know, you don't have to have your own health insurance. You can just come to the VA. So kind of what they're saying is, you know, you don't have to pay for your own health insurance. You can just go to the VA and they will literally supply you with whatever you need. So, and that ranges from medical equipment, mental health support, prescriptions, basically anything that you could need, you go there for. I also know there was something really cool that they mentioned. So mainly, you know, for females, obviously, if you are having a baby, you can have your baby for free. Like you can go to any hospital anywhere and it is free. The VA will cover it. You can also go to an urgent care and it's covered, you know, if you can't get to the VA.
Okay. No, thanks, Abigail. That's good to share. And so from your personal like assessment, you have chosen to utilize VA Health, go to the VA like hospital or whatever is near you, and you've gone that route, and you've chosen that's going to be your primary healthcare in the early part of your transition. Then is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't needed to seek out any other separate health insurance. I just go to the VA for whatever I need. So it's just they have a lot of great resources. They even have like these different classes you can go. You can do yoga, you can do crocheting. They have all kinds of stuff included with their benefits. And so mainly like that's the only thing I have really dealt with. Primary care, specialty care, all of that good stuff.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good to share too. And like, I appreciate you bringing up the idea that it's not just go in, have your normal, you know, PHAs. We still call them PHAs on active duty, right? Like you go in, you get your 6 months, but you can also have, there's that holistic approach, like you preventative stuff like yoga and classes and things for just overall health maintenance, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's basically just whatever you need, you can go there for. And you don't even have to make follow-up appointments. Like you don't have to continuously go. You don't even have to go for reasons of like, if you've made a claim for something, you don't have to go for something you've made a specific claim for. You can go for something different. Or, you know, you can also go for what you've already claimed.
Okay. All right. So, and I appreciate you sharing your experience up front, right? Because that's one of the things we want to talk about, right? Is as you're considering your healthcare beyond the Marine Corps, right? We've all been on TRICARE. And even when you're on active duty, there's a little bit of choice you have to make, right? If you're on base and you're near a military treatment facility, you might not have even really dealt with TRICARE that much. For me, at the end of my career, I came out here to Cleveland. There was no medical or military treatment facility. So I learned a lot more about TRICARE than I had previously when I was in Okinawa, when I was in Hawaii, and I was living on base and we were going to military treatment facilities. So for us as the veteran, right, you almost can say, like, if you really don't want to even deal with it, you almost don't have to deal with the health insurance issue, because if you get a rating and you're in the VA program, you can just go to the VA hospital for your own treatment, right? Now, if you've got a family or if you want other options, that's when we start talking about, hey, what is the best course of action? What is the best option for me as an individual and then for my family as well, right? So when I was on active duty, we came here and we started talking about TRICARE Prime versus TRICARE Select and which region do I belong to, and you learn all that stuff, right? So there's things to consider with that. But the first choice and the first thing you have to understand as you're transitioning before we even get to insurance is, like, you have an option as a veteran that doesn't even really deal with insurance, right? It's VA Health, right? So does anybody else on the call, has anybody else on the call utilized their VA hospital or VA Health post Marine Corps? You want to share a little bit, Paul?
Sure. I have both. Obviously, I have health insurance with my employer, with the local government. But for myself, because of the type that it is, it's what they call a quality high deductible health insurance plan. So fantastic part is they take like absolutely nothing out of your paycheck. However, there's a big caveat to that. You pay until you hit that deductible. Most of it is $10,000, I think, for families for coverage. Individual, I think, is around like $1,650. I can add up quickly, seeing as how, we're all vets and we usually have screwed up everything. So we tend to be quite expensive. Kids are mainly like, just take them to the doctor for their physicals and stuff, so they're nice and cheap. But for me, I utilize the VA portion for myself, let the family have the health plan that I have with the county. I've gone for just being sick, going in, just getting a checkup, getting random blood work done. Had an upper respiratory infection not too long ago that turned into pneumonia. VA took care of everything with that. Was not hard to get in, especially when you're sick. You just kind of call your hotline, which usually is to like your nurse's cube, or they call it a cube within the VA healthcare system. And it's kind of like a priority line for you to get into. And if you say, hey, I'm sick, they'll say, hey, come on down today. We'll get you in, go in, do your normal thing, like your check-in. They call you back just like a normal doctor's office visit. You go out and you got free doctor's visit, free prescription if you're sick. It's worked out quite well. In fact, I got a couple more appointments coming up here soon with mine. That's nothing related to what happened to me in the Marine Corps. Had some knee issues that wasn't under, service related. So still get to go to the VA, still get to get it taken care of for free. So it's worked out pretty well. But I'm also in a unique case where I have employer insurance also with the VA.
Yeah. And that's a great point, right? So I appreciate you sharing your positive experience with the VA and that healthcare system too, right? And so you and Abigail, I'm grateful that you both shared up front, because you guys are both kind of in that class where I talked about where you guys didn't retire, right? So you guys did your time and you got out, and so you're like, hey, I can use the VA. And then you mentioned employer provided healthcare, which is another consideration. So if you get out, you're maybe not eligible for TRICARE for life, right? Because you get out before you don't retire, right? But you get out, you've got options. You got the VA healthcare, and then you can start, as you consider your employment, health. If you're not a retiree, healthcare or employer provided healthcare is probably more of a consideration for you, right? So you can analyze or assess your employment prospects by what kind of healthcare do they provide, right? And if anybody has questions or wants to understand that, IDP, we can help you just through our network and what we have, kind of give you some examples of what an employer might provide. The best we can do is say, hey, if you were to come to IDP, here's what we can provide. Here's some examples of what industry provided healthcare might look like. And then keep in mind you got the VA. Anybody else got any thoughts on the VA healthcare system? Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I've got a VA clinic right here, 15 minutes down the road, and it's not the big hospitals. So if you're trying to get an MRI, CAT scan, anything like that, you got to drive down. I got to drive an hour and a half each way. But the clinics, especially the newer ones, they have a lot of pretty cool stuff at them. So if you need chiropractic care, you can go in there and get that. They do one of the really interesting ones for pain management, which I thought was a really weird joke, so I went and tried it. But the little dry needles, man, I can't think of what they're called, but the ones that you're sticking out like a pin cushion. I thought that's what it was going to be when I went in there. I go in there, they pull out a staple gun. Yeah, acupuncture. So I thought it was just going to be, I go in on the table, some Zen music playing, and they like stab me in the back and stuff. Dude pulls out a stapler. Dude, he's a doctor. Pulls out a stapler and he's like, all right, which ear, left or right? I'm like, right ear, I guess. He says, okay, these are going to stay in for 3 days. When they pop out, make sure you find them because they're really pokey and it'll be like Legos, but it'll be stuck in your foot. So dude takes this no joke hand stapler, puts these brass tacks in my ear, and it's a pain management thing. Weirdest thing ever. Kind of hurt, but not that bad. And that thing was super effective for like 2-3 weeks. It was incredible. So that's the kind of things that are available to you. You just got to go check out your clinic and see what's an option to you. And it's something they switch ears every once in a while. You go back, and when it's sunny out, it looks like you got some pretty sweet piercings all over your ear. But yeah, I've gone in for similar things like Paul was saying and Abby was saying. You've got the crud going around, you just can't shake it. Get into the hotline, they'll get you in pretty quickly. If you're trying to schedule appointments, so my example of trying to get just like an annual skin check for skin cancer stuff, you schedule that thing at a local VA clinic, you're going to be 2 months late. That's just how it is. It's a lot like using the MTF. But if you've got something more emergent, they'll get you in real quick. And if you need help getting extra exams, even post-separation for any of your VA claims or anything like that, they'll offer the service to you. They'll help you go through some of your records. So the VA is a resource for you. Don't dismiss it, even if you're not, focusing on that as your primary source. It is a benefit available to you, and it's a resource for you. So definitely recommend checking it out, especially if there's one close to you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Drew. So, appreciate Drew, Paul, and Abigail all sharing your stories, because, a lot of us don't have a lot of experience with the VA, and to be honest, like, not all the publicity and all the stories you hear are good. So I'm really glad that all three of you had positive experiences. So for those of you that are in the pipeline, Zach, Kevin, Taiwan, Jeff, right? Not all the stories are bad. So you can hear a couple of individuals here that are currently dealing with the VA and have pretty good experiences. So I appreciate you three jumping in too, because you three are, like I said, three of those that didn't get to the retirement phase and had to kind of deal with that. Like, okay, I need VA, I need employer provided healthcare, whatever your decisions were, right? Those of us that got to retirement have a different set of decisions too, because now we're eligible for TRICARE for Life. And the one thing that we haven't really talked about yet, and I appreciate this, Drew, Paul, Abigail, you guys talked about yourselves and your personal experiences, right? So just one of you, your families, right? What's the healthcare options? So as someone who is not retired, but you're eligible for the VA, how are your families impacted by that? You're on it, Paul.
So again, kind of like what I said with hopefully your employer has something. Let's just say you don't. Let's just say you're an employee say all you can really do is do part-time, so you don't rate benefits. Each state is going to be different, especially like if you have like kids. And why I'm saying like each state's different. Most states will offer child health care at very little to almost no cost. If you have a spouse, maybe they have something through there, so it can be a little bit cheaper just getting a spouse, getting her coverage or his coverage. But your children can usually be taken care of in each individual state under a state child health care type system. But if you're full-time, really look into what your employer has. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is better to go into the health marketplace or look at your state healthcare plans that you do have. Now, there are certain things that you can do. I don't remember if it's changed or not. But even if you decide to say get out after 4 years and go you're in inactive reserve, there is TRICARE Reserve. It's not the greatest as far as coverage goes, but it's also something that you can utilize, and it is in your toolbox. Some of the VA stuff, I haven't looked into it super hardcore, but I do remember hearing something and reading something about if you are 100% after your 4 years or 8 years and you did not retire, they still have something that is available, I believe, if you are dependent upon, like, say, your spouse for some care or something like that. I think there is something in there. I'd need to do a little bit more research on that and actually find that out. But yeah, states do have health care that you can utilize if your employer does not offer it. My wife, for example, is full-time, but her job, they have 22 employees. They do not have health care that's available to them. So that's kind of things that you kind of have to weigh in those different types of options and scenarios.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks, Paul, for sharing. And I mean, it's a really valuable point to bring up, right? That there are other options, right? So we talked about VA, we talked about TRICARE, we talked about employer provided insurance. There's also like local provided, right? Or state provided insurance, right? So there's a lot of research you can do, a lot of resources out there. Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I totally forgot about it. Our family doctor that we were going to, he recently sold his practice and went to what's called a premium kind of care. You basically pay it. I think he was offering about $1,200 per individual. You are covered with them for the rest of the year. So no health insurance whatsoever. It does not matter. You pay $1,200. You now have a family doctor that can write prescriptions to you and stuff like that. And then obviously, if you're going to get prescriptions, I know everybody's probably seen the commercials for it, but GoodRx, that is a legitimate program. It really does work. So if you don't have health insurance in that normal sort of way, you can find local doctors, family doctors in your area that may not take health insurance anymore and have like a normal practice in the normal sense, but they will have a premium type thing that you can utilize and actually purchase their services per year per person in your family. Sorry, just remember that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So does anybody have any questions on what we've covered so far? VA health, utilizing that, your local resources, and then kind of the options you have, employer provided health insurance, state provided, and other good resources that Paul just brought up. Anybody got any questions? And I'm kind of asking for questions now because we're at kind of a breaking point where we've talked about, okay, if you're not a retiree, here are your options, and we're going to transition to the retiree. So anybody got any questions at this point or want any clarification from Paul or Abby or Drew? Okay, appreciate you three sharing your experiences and your stories. And again, just want to reiterate, for those of us that have heard some of the bad narratives and the stories about the VA, it's not all bad. Good experiences shared here. So the next thing, right, as those of us that have been in longer and you get to that retirement point, the good thing is you get to that point, you've got some more options, right? So at that point, you become eligible for TRICARE for life for you and your dependents. So one thing we've already talked about in a couple of calls, but I want to say this again, make it clear and see if anybody has any questions or want to discuss. As you're transitioning and as you're retiring, there may be some confusion and it may be a misconception sometimes. Like, oh, wow, I've got to choose between VA and TRICARE for life. I want to just say that one more time. Like, you don't have to choose. You can use both. I know there's a couple individuals on this call that have used both. Use TRICARE for their family, use VA for themselves. Even in an individual experience, use VA for some things and TRICARE for some things. So does anybody have any questions on that, right? So as a retiree, you still have that local VA hospital. You can get into the VA health program and you can elect to utilize TRICARE for life, the TRICARE for retirees for you and your family. So any questions on that? Anybody want to kind of elaborate on that or got any experiences or stories related to utilizing both? Okay, so as you're getting out and you're looking at healthcare for you and your family, or just you, like I said, as a veteran, you've got the VA and you've got TRICARE. As you go into the TRICARE network, you have to make a choice in TRICARE, right? Do you want TRICARE Prime or do you want TRICARE Select, right? Those are the two that I think we choose from as retirees. And there's some differences in TRICARE Prime and TRICARE Select. So does anybody that's still on active duty, have you guys, any of you dealt with choosing between Prime and Select, like while you're on active duty?
I've had to do it a couple times on recruiting duty.
Okay. But what's your experience with it? Like, do you anything you want to share about kind of the differences between the two and what you chose and why?
I was on Prime Remote. The reason why we chose it was it gave us a little bit more freedom for my wife to kind of pick her doctors and the different things that she needed. But like it didn't really impact like me at all. I don't think it really impacted her at all. Like it was like whenever we went to the doctors or if we had to go for anything, a lot of things were like covered. It's not like we were coming out of pocket. It was like as if we were still in like a network. I mean, even out here, she got so comfortable with that even being on a base right now, she has better experiences just seeing doctors out in town than she does trying to see the doctor on base, who's usually backed up, or she just gets referred out anyways. So she has her own her PCMs off base anyways.
Okay. No, yeah, that's good. I appreciate you sharing. I think what you said with the TRICARE Prime Remote, the key takeaway is, like you said, right? It's there's no copay. It's almost as if, right, everything's provided, right? So it's very similar to being on active duty. Everything's provided, right? But in my experience and my understanding of the two, like the basic difference is TRICARE Prime Remote, and it's the same thing when you're retired. You choose between one or the other. TRICARE Prime Remote, you're going to get more covered, but there's a little bit more pre-approval required, right? Basically, everything on TRICARE Prime Remote, you got to go through your PCM, and everything has to be referral, and the doctors have to be in the network and things like that. So there's a little bit more restriction. TRICARE Select, you have more wiggle room or more leniency and going where you want to go, but you're going to experience more TRICAREs, or I'm sorry, more copays. You're going to have to pay a little bit more out of pocket, right? So that's important to consider. Do your research and figure out what's best for you and your family. Does anybody, that's been retired for a little bit want to share whether you chose for your families between, Prime Remote or Select, and why you might have chosen that? And if not, I'll kind of share a little bit about my experience. So we got here to Cleveland, and while we were on active duty, because it's not a military treatment facility here, we kind of had to decide between Prime and Select, and we chose Prime while we were on active duty. And we got 3 kids in the house, and we were, going to us after a while. It got a little bit agitating to go through all those referral processes, and we found ourselves a couple of times where we just scheduled an appointment for my son to go to physical therapy for a sports injury. And then we got a bill for it. And we're like, why did we get a bill for this? Oh, you didn't go to your PCM first. So we got a little bit frustrated with it. So when I retired, we decided to go with Select because we were excited. We're like, okay, cool. We don't got to go through all those referrals. We just, schedule appointments. Let's see who's in the network. But what we have found out now is that the co-pays add up. So we're waiting for November for open enrollment. And I think we're going to go back to Prime. We're going to get a little bit more organized and make sure we do our referrals and go through the PCMs. But just sharing that experience, because I've been retired for 18 months. I had an experience with it on active duty, different experience in retirement. But just kind of throwing that out there. So something for those of you that are in the pipeline to think about. I know they touch on it in TRS. I don't think they go too in depth with it. So, feel free to use the Discord server to ask questions, ask people about their personal experiences. But anybody got any, specific questions related to choosing between VA Health, TRICARE Prime, TRICARE Remote, and what your healthcare options are as a retiree? Okay, so in addition to health insurance and health coverage, right, there's a whole other list of insurances that you might have to consider. I rattled some of them off at the beginning of the call. I think the next one we'll touch on, in addition to health insurance, probably the next logical one to talk about is life insurance. And again, we've talked about that on some of the previous calls. So I think the biggest thing to get out up front, again, just like I said with healthcare, there's a misconception sometimes that it's VA Health or it's TRICARE. You can do both, right? The next thing is SBP and life insurance. I got to choose VGLI, because we have SGLI, we're on active duty. And then can you choose VGLI, or should you do, independent life insurance through a financial institution or something like that? Or should you do SBP, right? SBP is one choice, and then your insurance is another choice. They're not exclusive. You can do both. You can have survivor benefit plan for your dependents, and you can have life insurance, or you can choose to do one or the other. I'm not going to pretend to be a financial advisor and tell you whether SBP is a good financial investment or not. You may hear people tell you it is. You may hear people tell you it's not. That's up for you to decide with your family. What I'll tell you is it's like this, right? I chose SBP because I liked the idea of an annuity and my retirement continuing to pay if something were to happen to me, right? My spouse and my family will continue to get a portion of my retirement as an annuity going on. I also complemented it with life insurance, right? But that's kind of, a summary of the choice there. So you choose, you can either elect your SBP or you can decline it, and then you can choose a life insurance, whole term, whatever the different types of life insurance and how you want to go through that. And then VGLI versus other forms of life insurance. Again, not going to pretend to be a financial advisor. Some people like VGLI because you don't need to have any medical exams. You can kind of roll right into it. Some people advise you against it because of the increased premiums over time. And they'll say you get better deals from different places. My personal experience, I didn't do VGLI. I went with USAA. USAA has a window, upon transition that you don't have to get any medical exams. I've got $1 million policy. It's not very expensive on a monthly basis. And it was really seamless. Like I didn't have to do any medical exams. I got that. So I have that and SBP. Anybody else that's kind of further along in the retirement process or new to the retirement process want to add anything to the discussion about SBP and life insurance? All right. Do any of you that are kind of in the, go ahead, Zach, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out, having gone through TRS more recently, just the SVP, you're automatically enrolled in it. So if you don't do anything, you're going to do survivor benefits. If you want to opt out, there's a way to opt out, but that also includes like your spouse has to sign like paperwork and stuff too, showing like that she understands that you're opting out and stuff. So it's not something where you enroll or you don't enroll. Like you're going to be enrolled if you do nothing. So just throwing that out there in case people didn't know, like, oh, why am I paying for this? I never enrolled. You're automatically going to be enrolled. So if you want out, you have to opt out. And the number, I guess the number one group of people that I see that opt out that it makes sense for is dual military spouse. Because if you're both getting to 20 years anyways, you're going to have your own retirements each. So do I really need to get, the half of my spouse if they pass his retirement? But I think you brought up a good point, Jim. It's something that I think about too, which is like, I want that safety net if something were to happen to me, that at least my family's still getting a monthly, whether you could probably do the cost analysis and determine, how much you're paying over how many years, if you live so long, like, is it really going to be worth it? But is that, what you're paying for is to have that safety net. So.
Yeah, great point, Zach. I appreciate you pointing that out, right? You do have to opt out of it, and it does require your spouse's acknowledgement to opt out of it. So great point. And again, it's an individual assessment. How old are your kids? What's your spouse's employment situation? What do you want them to have just in case something happens to you? So great point, Zach. I appreciate you sharing that. Brandon, what do you got?
I'm actually looking at my DD form 2656, which is what Zach and Jim are talking about. You have to fill this out regardless in order for DFAS to create your retired pay account. So what they both said is 100% accurate. The only addition that I would make is that it has to be notarized. So I did mine with the adjutant here at CLR 4 with the reserve command. I mean, I don't know how you guys would do it in the fleet. I'm assuming probably similar concept, just have the adj do it at the regiment or whatever the case may be. But just remember that it does have to be annotated, and it is part of the normal process to create the retirement account in DFAS.
Yeah, good point, Brandon. Thanks for bringing that up. Right. So you got to get your spouse's acknowledgement. It has to be notarized so that you can opt out of it if that's the decision you decide to make. All right, cool. Anybody else that's kind of further on the left side of the spectrum thinking about retirement, getting into retirement, got any questions? SBP, life insurance, comparing. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, not so much a question, but so everybody's situation is different. This is something I've been looking into heavily with SBP and talking with my wife about it. And I guess, we're taking more of the gamble aspect of it of, hey, we can invest this or get a higher life insurance policy and we'll make up for it in the long run, getting, money back in the market or something to that effect. So the SBP did look like, interesting. We had debated it heavily. We talked about it for a few days. But at the end of the day, like just on the other side of the spectrum, we had decided to not go with the SBP, save the money, invest it, or just up our life insurance policy a little bit just to make up for that, those funds.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing that other perspective, right? Because like I said, I'm not going to pretend to be a financial advisor, and I've heard lots of narratives similar to what you said, right? And I would agree. There's probably in most cases better things to do with that amount of money. It just depends on how much time you as an individual are willing to spend researching and weighing the cost benefit, right? So SBP is a safe way, right? But there's definitely you can't argue against the idea that there's better ways to probably utilize that money on a monthly basis. So I appreciate you sharing that opposing perspective and what you and your wife decided was best for you. Because I think that's what it boils down to is do your research, be informed, and decide what's best for you and your individual situation, right? The age of your kids, the status of your spouse, and how much time you're willing to invest in handling your own money, right? Because there's definitely better options out there. So thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. Anybody else got any comments, questions, stories related to life insurance and SBP? Okay, so we're about 12 minutes away from 9 o'clock. We usually schedule these for an hour. We usually stay on a lot longer, but just acknowledging that we're getting close to the end of time here. So we did want to talk a little bit about some of the other types of insurances that you might deal with. So we talked about health insurance and we talked about life insurance. We spent quite a bit of time on those, but in most of our experience, like those are the two most pressing ones, right? The most eminent ones that you got to think about. Outside of that, lots of other types of things. Homeowners insurance, other types of property insurance, things like that. So I think Drew, you've had some experiences recently and had a little bit to share. So I'm going to kick it over to you. Anything you want to talk about with homeowners insurance, how to consider, shop around, and what are some of the things you might want to really pay attention to other than just the standard, homeowners insurance policy?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short so we can get some Q&A in at the end too. But just one kind of personal admin note. If you ever use TRICARE Online patient portal, that is being decommissioned on 1 April. So if you have records out there and you need to get them, log in within the next, 4 days, download all your stuff. I'll put a link to some of the steps in our Discord. So if anybody needs it, just check it out in there or shoot me a message, whatever. So just an FYI. So for some of the additional insurances, I'll tie it back to closer to the topics we've had before. So health, disability, stuff like that. So another kind of insurance that I've taken advantage of a lot with I have 3 kids under 8 years old, pretty active, 2 boys that just like to break things, including themselves sometimes. My 2-year-old broke both of his feet within 2 weeks. Freak thing, and the doc was like, how did it happen? One was on a trampoline and one was on a slip and slide. He broke one on the other cast. So I don't know how you prevent that stuff, but we added through my previous employer an accident insurance. So accident insurance is just like, hey, if you have this event, you go to urgent care, you have a break, you have a sprain, whatever. There is a set reimbursement for that. You file the claims, submit the support, they send you a check. That's it. This could probably incriminate me in some way, so I'm going to say it even though it's going out on YouTube. But for my son's broken foot, I made money on him breaking his foot. It was the weirdest thing, and I felt like a terrible parent for that happening. But it also paid for my arms were sore because I had to carry this kid around for like 6 weeks because he couldn't walk on his feet. So just one to consider if, again, this goes back to what Kevin and Jim were just talking about, your individual situation. If you don't have family members who are accident prone or young kids who are super active, if that's not been a part of your life or medical history, might not be for you. It's pretty inexpensive. Typically, if you get it through an employer, it's a couple bucks a month in most states. It's been great for me. I've really benefited from it. Then the employment. So an additional one that's like right below life insurance would be some of the disability insurances that you can get. So if something happens to you and you are unable to work, there are these disability insurances that you can add on, again, pretty low cost, and they will cover up to, I think it's in most states, $10,000 a month of your revenue replacement. So if you can't work, you use up all your PTO and you're still unable to work because of a medical reason, there is long-term and short-term disability that will cover you, keep that revenue going for you while you're out of work. I've seen it be really good for people, major car accidents, major surgeries, and it just kept that revenue coming in for them. Maybe not 100% of what they were doing, depending on their position, location, whatever, but it took away that stress of them trying to recover, but thinking about how am I going to make money to pay the mortgage, pay for my kids' school, put groceries on the table. So kind of that's just to say there are a lot more options when you get out of the uniform, and you got to look at these things, and that it's that cost benefit analysis to you. What is something that you're willing to accept a risk on, and what are those things that it's worth just paying that money out so that no matter what happens, you can sleep pretty well at night. The last one, I'll go a little bit more into detail on this. Try to keep me at 2 minutes. Yeah, Jeff, we'll get that out to you here pretty shortly. So unfortunately, I've had to use a lot of this extra homeowners insurance stuff. I live up in the upstate of South Carolina right now. Looking out my window, we can see the fires up at Table Rock and Caesar's Head. We had Hurricane Helene come through in November. So, the 100-year flood, we got it. When you have homeowners insurance, there are things that are covered and there are things that are not covered. So when you go to buy that house and get that policy, don't let the insurance agent who you're working with just sit you down and say, hey, here's your dwelling coverage, your additional belongings coverage, and here's your monthly payment. Good. No, I have a call scheduled in 3 weeks for my renewal on my homeowner's insurance, and we're going to go through flood, fire, hurricane, wind, mold. So living in the Southeast, we have mold, period. It's hot, it's humid. These buildings are, especially newer buildings, are not built with airflow in mind. There's mold. My last house was infested with toxic mold. I had to move. That was a $100,000 plus ordeal of getting that cleaned up, mitigated, taking care of family medical stuff, replacing items. Everything porous and soft had to be discarded. It was pretty crazy. The standard mold coverage across the country is $5,000. So if you live in a place where you might run into that, talk to your insurance agent about, hey, what are some of the additional things that we can do? Because there are other riders that you can throw on there to help mitigate some of that, damage recovery for items and goods. So when you're going through the process, just find a list. You can do a simple Google search. You can ask this community and say, hey, what are some of the things that could be, you're doing an FMEA type risk assessment for yourself. What are the things that could go wrong? How do I protect myself? Is it really something that I'm willing to pay $100 a month for, or is that not worth it? And then finally, just know that insurance is there to make money, not give money. So be prepared to duke it out through the paperwork. If you've got legit stuff, you'll get there. They're just going to make you earn it. So that's what I've got. I hit my 2 minutes. If you have specific questions, more than happy to talk afterward, online, one-on-one, whatever you want. So we'll open it up now for any Q&A. Does not have to be directly related to insurance. It can be whatever's on your mind, whatever's pressing you right now, or something for somebody else. And Jeff, I'll look at the Discord link real quick, get it over to you.
Abby already put it in the chat. She's always ahead of us, Drew. She's always ahead of us.
That's why she's here. We need her.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. So does anybody got any questions? We again kind of run through. We started with health insurance. If you're getting out, what are your options if you're not eligible for TRICARE for life? And then as a retiree, you've got some decisions to make: SVP, life insurance, health insurance. And then Drew did a really good job of laying out some of the more detailed decisions and how to really analyze like a homeowner's insurance policy and what's covered there. So anybody got any questions? Paul, I see your hand popped up.
It's not really insurance related, but kind of talking about protecting yourself and your family as well too. I know most of us in here probably are either homeowners or wanting to become homeowners. It's not a bad idea to start looking into a trust and selling your assets into the trust. So if something does catastrophic happen to you and you have medical costs, if you're not retired, out the roof, there are ways that you can have your stuff protected. They can come after for wage garnishment and everything, but your house is still protected. Your asset is still protected, and you don't have to worry about a lot of those things. But like Drew said, those additional insurances to cover a catastrophic accident or something like that happens. A lot of us who aren't retired, we kind of have what's called it's called FMLA, and it's up to 12 weeks. You're not paid during that time. It just allows you to take the time off to recover, and your employer cannot replace you. That's it. So what Drew was saying about making sure you have accidental catastrophic damages to you, definitely look into that. It really is quite cheap when it comes to insurance type things. So a lot of those things kind of add up into it, but also kind of protecting, like I said, those assets. Think about looking at a trust to set your assets into.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That's great. I appreciate you throwing that out there as an additional option and some kind of enhanced thoughts on personal financial management. So like we said at the beginning, no one on here is a professional financial manager. No one on here is a professional insurance advisor. We're just veterans sharing our stories. What I will say real quick is it all boils down to your personal risk tolerance, what's best for you and your family, right? Choosing health insurance, deciding on what type of life insurance, or if you feel like you need life insurance, choosing homeowners insurance, and then deciding on what are the add-ons you want to put on there, right? Like if you want to pay a little bit of extra money up front for peace of mind on the back end, right? Insurance and securities and trusts, those are the kind of, right? But if you're, comfortable and your tolerance risk or your personal assessment of your situation is that you can do better things with your money, like Kevin said, right? With the SBP, like those are all individual decisions, but to me, just a personal opinion, it kind of boils down to like risk tolerance and what do you value, like that peace of mind over that little financial benefit, or how you manage your money. They're very personal decisions across the board, whatever type of insurance or what you're talking about. Insurance is all about managing and mitigating risk, and that's kind of what it boils down to, looking at you and your situation and what you want to do to protect yourself. So going all the way from the most simplest idea of choosing like, okay, I got to have some type of health insurance, to like, how do I protect myself and my assets and insure myself to the maximum, all the way to like establishing a trust to protect yourself and your assets. So a lot of great information shared. Appreciate the personal stories, the personal examples. Anybody got any questions or anything that we didn't cover related to insurance or anything that you want to ask? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, just one thing. I'm not sure if anybody has any experience with this, but it was talked about a lot at TRS, which is the whole life insurance policy. I was just wondering if anybody had any experience with that or utilize that.
So anybody feel qualified to talk about term versus whole life insurance?
Lou.
I don't want to say I'm qualified. I've got both though, since I've gotten out, and it was a pretty simple process. So depending on what insurance group you want to go with, but you can definitely you can start your whole life insurance, I would say, while you're still active duty before you get your rating. And if you can get that, then when you get out and you decide to get term, like I did as well, like it's easier. And typically your insurance group will then utilize just your last physical that you did with them, and they can use all that information to then give you term. So I've got both, and it was pretty simple. I think I'll share with you guys, like my term is, it's term 80 and it's like $60 a month, right? So it's like, because I use all of my information from when I was on active duty to run all of my quotes and stuff like that. So, if you're still active duty and you still haven't gotten a rating, I would say, shop around, whether if you go with, Northwestern Mutual or MetLife or whoever you want to go with, and then, try to see if you can get your whole life insurance now, or, whatever they call it, IUL, or, all that stuff, and just make sure that they set you up correctly. So that way you can have, like I have mine with my whole life insurance has like a cash value. So it's something that I can use and borrow against at any time as well. And that one even is still super low, because as I was on terminal and I did it, they still saw me like
full fit for duty, and they saw me like, oh, you're still active duty, so nothing's broken. So they treated me like I was 100%, capable of doing everything. Where God knows I am not. I can barely get up in the morning without my knees cracking. So, but they didn't know that. You know what I mean? So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Thanks, Lou, for sharing. And Kevin, did that answer your question? And I kind of want to just talk a little bit more conceptually about whole versus term, but when you ask the question and they talk about it at TRS, because I remember talking about it at TRS too, and they don't really dive in, or at least in the one that I had, and explaining the difference between term and whole. So is that what you're asking? Like, kind of how do you compare term versus whole? Or were you asking more like examples like Lou said of like, you can do both, right? Like we said before with other things, they're not exclusive. You can choose to do both. It really just depends on what you want. But yeah, Kevin, did that kind of answer your question? Or
I guess I didn't have like a real question to it. Like I've been kind of looking into it, but like I just don't know many people that have used whole life other than like family members, and other than like I don't know any military members that have gone out and gotten whole. So just like why, I guess, or what was the reason they jumped to whole? Was it to borrow against, or was it like?
Yeah, it's kind of like you said earlier, right? Like insurance, in my opinion, right? Like, or common opinion is like, I mean, it's about mitigating risk and giving yourself a peace of mind and something to feel good about, a safety net, right? But there are ways that you can utilize your money better, right? Like you mentioned with SVP, if you're comfortable that $200 a month or however much it comes out, like you could be actually reinvesting that and making more money, right? Like whole versus term, basically, like what I was told and kind of the way I process it is like, where do I think I'm going to be? Like, what's the term? Like I did a 20-year term, right? Because I figured, hey, in 20 years, IDPs, Lou and Drew will be running IDP and I'll be retired and I'll be living the good life. My family's not going to be worried about term life insurance, right? So like whole life insurance will cover you forever. And like you said, you can borrow against it. It provides some flexibilities and financial benefit. Like term is more of just a safety net, right? Like you're paying into it in case something happens, but if nothing happens, and it covers you to a certain point, right? So like me, my term is 20 years. After 20 years, hey, everybody's got to fend for themselves, right? But so I don't know if that, and again, I'm not an expert, but if somebody wants to elaborate on that or correct some of that, go ahead, Lou.
So I will say that with term, depending on which one you do, like, right, there's like term 20, term 40, whichever one you do. But I know like if you do, there's a certain term, like the one I've got, you can actually turn some of that money that you invested into your term into your whole life insurance as well. So sometimes people get that misconception where it's like term, you get nothing out of it, but you can, you know what I mean? It just has to be set up correctly through your insurance provider. And then as far as like, to add to the whole versus term, like for me, my biggest thing was after I found the right group, there's ones that you can set up where you pay for 20 years. And then after that, everything that's in it starts paying for itself. Or you can do what's called you can overfund it. And then you just pay for 10 years. And if you pay, you can pay the entire life insurance policy off in 10 years. And then from there, all the money that you've accumulated at anywhere from 8 to 12%, whatever it is typically, then you just borrow against that. So that was a big thing for me. Like, I just want to borrow against myself. I don't want to have to go anywhere else. And if I pay, and the beautiful thing is if you don't pay it back, I hate to say this, but it's going to go like what Jim said. If you don't pay the money that you borrowed against yourself back, there's no harm, no foul. All it is like that money that you borrowed, whenever you die, they just take that off the top from your life insurance that you're expected to get. So it's almost like a free loan that you've already paid like in advance. So it's just different things that you can do to make sure you set yourself up.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. I appreciate you highlighting that and clearly demonstrating that you're much more financially savvy than I am. So
I'm not a financial manager. I am just telling you what I did.
No.
What my advisor, explained to me. So I just want to make sure to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I told Grant that I was going to make sure that I stopped you from talking a little bit.
Okay, thank you. So Kevin, that's helpful.
Yeah, that was great, actually.
Okay, good. And again, yeah, man, like that's why we're doing this. Because then, share stories, ask questions, and if something comes up later and you want to like dive in and reach out to somebody, the Discord link's out there now. So now not only do we have the monthly calls, but we have the ability to stay connected throughout, follow up on conversations, go back, rewatch it. Hey, Lou was explaining that. I wasn't paying attention enough. I got to go back and listen to what he said. So it's all out there. It's all accessible. And it's shareable. So one thing I want to just encourage everybody, we're always trying to grow this community. We believe in it, and we think it's beneficial. So appreciate the new joins. Appreciate those of you that have come on over the past couple months. And if you think you know anybody that could benefit from this, please let them know. Please share the information. And if you get a chance to check out the website and you see the agenda, if there's something that you think is missing, another topic, bring it up. We'll throw it on there. We always have the opportunity to, shorten the topic that we had planned and talk more about what you guys want to hear about, things like that. So yeah, at this point, we've gone a little bit over the normal hour, but like most of you are used to, we stay on, we talk a little bit more. But just want to throw out there at this point, any questions or any last comments to wrap up the insurance discussion?